wrapped up 2024 by speed watching several German Netflix shows, and I've seen enough to tell you exactly that there are 10 I can highly recommend. Let's start with the first one. Biohackers. Mia Ackerlund is a dedicated freshman student, and one of her professors is a highly respected thought leader in genetic engineering, Dr. Tanja Lawrence, who only lets the best students work for her. But her experiments are very controversial, and many think that she's pushing the bar with biology ethics. Immediately, Mia knows she wants to be one of them, but not for the same reason as the other students. She actually has two different goals: to expose Dr. Lawrence's unethical practices and to avenge her deceased brother. He died as a subject of one of Lawrence's gene editing experiments, and as she investigates her further, Mia discovers that her brother's death might not have been an accident at all. Throughout all of her freshman year, Mia meets tons of interesting characters who share Lawrence's passion for scientific advancement, but who have trouble setting a boundary. In the very first episode, she goes on a date with Lawrence's teaching assistant after throwing up on his shoes at a party. And while the night starts out pretty normal, it ends with him taking her to his own secret biology lab in the woods. He then reveals that he's actually making a gene vector, a virus that can transport DNA into human cells. Her roommates are also deeply involved in the subculture of biohacking, where DIY biology and underground genetic experiments run rampant. Biohackers is packed with underlying themes and messages like ethics in biotechnology, justice versus revenge, the balance between power and risk in scientific innovations, and, of course, trust and betrayal. It's certainly thought-provoking, so if you like shows that make you think and have you evaluating your own morals, this one's a must-watch. How to sell drugs online fast. Everyone suspects the super popular rich kid who likes to flex his money to be the school drug dealer, but no one suspects the nerd. Moritz Zimmerman is a huge tech geek, and he's been working with his friend Lenny on an invention that they're trying to get funded. But his life dramatically changes when his girlfriend Lisa comes back from the United States and breaks up with him. Confused and desperate to know what changed, he logs into her Facebook account to find that she's been partying overseas, and her American friends introduce her to the ecstasy, which she's now asking the much hotter, much fitter, much richer guy at school to bring to her welcome home party. In a desperate attempt to get her back, Moritz plans to buy all of the ecstasy off the new guy's supplier, so he shows up empty-handed. The plan fails, and he's now stuck with a huge bag full of drugs. Naturally, this prompts him to look up how to sell them online fast. He and Lenny set up an online shop called My Drugs, an anonymous online marketplace on the dark web. And their amateur drug dealing operation quickly snowballs into a full-blown business. How to sell drugs online fast deserves a place on your watch list if you're into dark comedy and coming-of-age dramas. It combines humor, teenage rebellion, and modern-day commentary on the internet, entrepreneurship, and illegal drug trade, making it an extremely unique but culturally relevant series that I, for one, definitely enjoy. Dark. Dark is set in Winden, a fictional town in Germany. It's a sci-fi thriller, and it has one of the most fascinating storylines I've ever watched in my life. Time travel, interconnected families, and existential questions are the main themes of the show, and it spans multiple timelines that show us episode by episode how these families have been affected by mysterious disappearances, time loops, and very dark secrets that town works hard to closet. The show starts in 2019 when teenage boy Eric Obendorf goes missing. That same year, Michael Nielsen disappears in the woods near the town's nuclear power plant. But things get weird when people start realizing that these disappearances are eerily similar to a missing persons case in 1986. Way too similar. We find out in later episodes that the town is actually stuck in a time loop that repeats tragic disappearing cases in 33-year intervals, which started in 1953. But it doesn't end there. The main characters still have many more mysteries to solve, including a mysterious cave system with a wormhole and a device known as the God Particle. The storyline is pretty intricate, so I don't really recommend this one for German beginners unless you're very good at keeping up with subtitles. But if you're a fan of shows like Lost or Stranger Things, I guarantee you'll also absolutely love dark. King of Stonks. Finance, corporate fraud, tech startups. Is it possible to turn these everyday nerdy concepts into a satirical dark comedy drama? Yes! And that is exactly what Kings of Stonks is. This show follows Cable Cash, a fictional fintech company, through its rapid rise to success, but also its chaotic downfall. To the outside world, Cable Cash is an up-and-coming revolutionary company that has really transformed online payments. But it's actually made up of fraud, corruption, and shady dealings. And Felix Armand, one of the ambitious co-CEOs of Cable Cash, is responsible for managing their illegal schemes. He also feels like he never receives enough recognition and is never satisfied with his level of success, constantly making him want more. Not to mention, his other responsibility is crisis management, constantly having to deal with the fallout of their questionable business practices and answer to the media they've become entangled with on an online sex scandal. All of this while Magnus Kramer, the other CEO, gets to take all of the good credit for Cable Cash. The show follows the two CEOs as they prepare for its IPO, initial public offering. And we see Felix navigate a minefield of obstacles like legal investigations, media scrutiny, and very hostile competitors. The characters are funny, so it's hard not to root for them despite all the shady stuff. But that's what makes King of Stonks so interesting. It explores heavy topics like corporate greed, corruption, moral ambiguity, and power dynamics on a down-to-earth way, but it's also dramatic enough to keep you highly entertained. One thing I personally liked about King of Stonks is that it has a good mix of advanced vocabulary, words that have to go with things like finances, corporate business, but it also has everyday words and phrases. And while Netflix subtitles are great for extracting vocab, I highly recommend using a more in-depth tool specifically built for language learners, like FluentU's Chrome extension. With the FluentU Chrome extension, you can use any Netflix content or YouTube video that has subtitles to learn German vocabulary and grammar. The extension makes each subtitle word clickable so you can see its meanings, examples written by language experts, and video examples of native speakers using the vocab across different contexts. You get all the information you need about a German word without ever changing your screen. And you can save the words you click on to your FluentU account to study them later. You can also import your favorite YouTube videos into your account, making it easier to watch them and learn on your phone later. FluentU also has thousands of authentic videos and a curated library that's tailored for you, no matter your level. So even beginners can learn by watching videos. In addition to this, FluentU has German lessons with helpful teacher explanations. And at the end of each lesson and video, you get personalized quizzes and speaking questions to make everything you just learned really stick. To try FluentU right now for free, click the link in the description below and get your free trial. Now, let's get to show number 5. Woman of the Dead. This German-Austrian thriller is the perfect mix of crime, mystery, and psychological drama. It's set in a remote alpine mountain town where a web of dark secrets starts to unravel. Blum is a funeral home owner and devoted wife to her husband Mark, a local police officer. But her life is forever changed when he's killed in a hit-and-run accident. But Blum suspects there's something more sinister going on as she becomes more and more convinced that the accident was a deliberate act tied to something her husband had uncovered. Turns out, Mark was investigating a human trafficking ring. And before his death, he had hinted at uncovering something big. Fueled by grief and a desire for revenge, Blum starts her own investigation into the town's secrets. And what she finds is way darker than what she could have ever imagined, pointing to the involvement of clergy, business people, and even law enforcement. From uncovering a list of names of people tied to the trafficking ring to learning just how long these sick operations have been running under everyone's noses, Blum's discoveries lead her to cross paths with very dangerous people. And not only that, she's also forced to face her dark past and, for the first time, meet her own capabilities for violence. Now, I won't lie, Woman of the Dead covers some heavy themes. But if you're not too sensitive, it's definitely worth a watch. The show dives deep into themes like life lessons, grief, revenge, justice, corruption, and human duality. So, if you're into thought-provoking thrillers, this show will be your cup of tea. Dogs of Berlin. This is a German crime drama that explores themes like corruption, organized crime, and identity, but with an amazing element of humor. I was laughing as much as I was on the edge of my seat. Orkan Erdem is a German-Turkish soccer player on the national team, and he was murdered just before a huge international game. And of course, because of who he is, there is now immense public and political pressure to find out who did it. The murder case is given two detectives, Kurt Grimmer and Errol Birken. The only problem is that they are completely different, from their personalities to their pasts. Kurt is a morally ambiguous and corrupt German detective with a troubled personal life. He grew up in Berlin's rough neighborhoods and has connections to neo-Nazi groups, which he uses to his advantage. He doesn't care as much about justice as he does about his personal goals, so he often bends the law to get what he needs. Errol, on the other hand, is an idealistic and by-the-book detective. Like the soccer player, he's also German-Turkish and also openly gay. Hence, he faces quite a bit of prejudice within the police force and from his own community. His sense of justice just doesn't mix well with Kurt's opportunism, so working together is complicated to say the least. But as they work in the case and get to know each other, they find interesting ways to collaborate. And they are united on one thing. This investigation has turned out to be way bigger than they ever thought. The further they dig, the more they uncover a huge network of organized crime and corruption in Berlin. And it involves tons of powerful groups like neo-Nazis, the Turkish mafia, Arab clans, and government officials. Aside from being thought-provoking, thriller, and very funny, the show also calls attention to Berlin's social and cultural fractures, highlighting issues of racism, xenophobia, and systemic corruption. So if you're into a mix of comedy, crime, and social justice, you love Dogs of Berlin. Freud. If you've ever taken a psychology class, you've heard of Sigmund Freud. This Netflix show takes him and his ideas and places them into a psychological thriller that blends historical fiction with the crime and supernatural. In 1880s Vienna, young Sigmund Freud is struggling to establish his career. He has quite some radical theories about the unconscious mind and hypnosis, so he's constantly ridiculed by the conservative medical establishment, which honestly think that he's just a lunatic. He's frustrated and desperate for validation, but his life changes forever when he meets traumatized war veteran turned detective Alfred Kiss and psychic medium Fleur Salome. In episode 1, Freud is invited to a soiree where the main event is a seance, which is where he meets Fleur. He is skeptical at first, and his scientific brain dismisses her as using tricks. But when she enters a trance and starts talking about her murder, he is determined to have a conversation with her. This leads to them agreeing to work together to solve a series of murders haunting Vienna. He later meets Alfred, and the three of them uncover a conspiracy involving an aristocratic cult that uses hypnotism and occult practices to manipulate people for political gain. But despite all the progress they've made, Freud finds himself struggling with the weight of their findings. He now has to battle not only external enemies, but also his own inner demons, and he develops a growing reliance on cocaine to fuel his work. But this addiction and his obsession with understanding the human psyche start driving him into dark and unstable corners of his mind and the physical world. If you're looking for a documentary on the real life of Sigmund Freud, I'll tell you right now that this isn't the show for you. I mean, it's called historical fiction after all. But if you like psychological thrillers, are intrigued by the paranormal, and enjoy thought-provoking shows that touch on concepts like corruption, power, addiction, and trauma, Freud is 100% the series for you. The $1 Billion Code. Courtroom drama, historical flashbacks, personal struggles, betrayal, justice. Wrap those things up and turn them into a TV show, and you've got $1 Billion Code. It follows two German tech innovators who accuse Google of stealing their concept to create Google Earth. And it gets messy. Carsten Flutter and Yuri Müller are the brains behind TerraVision, a groundbreaking visualization software they developed back in the 90s. Combining Carsten's artistic vision with Yuri's technical expertise, they make TerraVision the first invention to let people explore Earth using satellite images. The show starts in Berlin's techno and art scene in the 1990s, where the two meet for the very first time. They instantly hit it off, and it doesn't take long before their innovative brain comes up and the idea behind TerraVision. And so we see them bringing it to life. Fast forward to when it's finished and they desperately wanted to get it off the ground. They find themselves in Silicon Valley presenting TerraVision to investors and tech leaders. They do love TerraVision, but Karsten and Jury's lack of business savviness puts them at a slight disadvantage. So little did they know that they were becoming victims of intellectual property theft. 20 years later, when they realize that Google is releasing an eerily similar product, Google Earth, they file a lawsuit against the company for patent infringement. We are then taken to a long courtroom drama, high-stakes legal battles, nerve-wracking trials, and Karsten and Jury's own personal struggles. I'm usually not one for tech shows, but Billion Dollar Code was different for me. For one, it's a true story. But at the same time, it doesn't really feel very documentary style. It's much more engaging. Finally, although most of us aren't out there suing Google for stealing our ideas, the flashbacks and character development experienced by Karsten and Jury somehow make them much more relatable. Kleo. Kleo Straub is a highly skilled assassin working for the East German secret police, called the Stasi. She's very loyal to them and has always done her job very well, which is why she's so shocked when she's suddenly arrested by her superiors while on a high-stakes mission to assassinate a target in West Berlin. Her government has betrayed her, and she finds herself surviving German prison after being falsely accused of treason. Unsurprisingly, this changes Kleo forever. Her beliefs are shattered, and she vows to get revenge. But that's just the prologue. The plot actually starts with Kleo being unexpectedly released from prison. After discovering that her Stasi comrades have moved on and are now living new lives while she was left with nothing, she decides to hunt down the ones responsible for her imprisonment. Each episode focuses on Kleo tracking down a different target, from former colleagues, double agents, and powerful political players. She also learns more about her arrest and how it's tied to a conspiracy much bigger than she ever dared imagine, involving powerful entities like the CIA. A West Berlin police officer named Sven Petzold also starts to pursue her, considering that she's revenge murdered a considerable amount of people, and becomes obsessed with her case. I really enjoy watching how Kleo changes throughout the series. She continues to evolve throughout the show, and eventually we get to see her go from bloodthirsty, hurt, and vengeful assassin to a more introspective woman who reevaluates her values, moralities, and old beliefs. Crooks. It's one thing to watch a good crime show, but it's another to know that it was based on something that actually happened. Crooks was inspired by the 2017 Big Maple Leaf heist, where 100-kilogram gold coin was stolen from Berlin's Boat Museum. The show follows Charlie, a reformed safecracker who has built a peaceful life in Berlin with his wife and son. But his criminal past resurfaces, and he's forced to participate in a heist to steal the gold coin if he wants to keep his family safe. He teams up with a Vienna gang driver named Joseph to move what they stole to Austria. But the heist goes left when someone from their team unexpectedly betrays them, leaving them entangled with some of Europe's most dangerous crime lords. They accomplished their mission. They got the coin. But now they have nowhere to go and nothing to do with it. At first, he and Joseph don't really like each other. They're in two completely different worlds. Charlie was dragged back into the crime world by force, and Joseph is a small-time criminal with his sights set on moving up the ranks. But when they're both forced to escape their failed heist, their relationship evolves as they have to depend on each other to survive. They're pursued across Europe in a series of heart-pounding chases, and although they have different morals, they have one thing in common. Their families are in tow, and they have to keep them safe at all costs. We see Charlie use his past as a safecracker to always keep them a few steps ahead, and Joseph's street smarts and improvisation get them out of unpredictable situations. And as time goes on, they develop a mutual respect for each other. Like any crime show, this one had me biting my nails and at the edge of my seat. But I also laughed a lot. If you like these types of crime dramas with complicated relationships and a touch of comedy, I highly recommend Crooks. Well, there you have it, my top 10 favorite German Netflix shows. But want to know something else that I recommend? Using your favorite shows in English to learn German. Check out this next video of a deep dive German lesson using an episode of Friends.